Back here on CBS Sports HQ, oh boy, this is setting up to be the game of the year in the group of 5. 17th ranked Boise State heading to Vegas to take on 6-1 UNLV with first place in the Mountain West on the line. And that lead out west could shape up to be the difference maker down the stretch to figure out who ultimately makes the college football playoff. Let's welcome on Josh Pate, who's going to be out in the desert on Friday night as part of a very busy schedule this weekend. Josh, both of these teams 2-0 in the Mountain West. Just how big of a game is this when you consider finding, a Mountain West champion and potentially a person to have the group of 5 representation, or a team, I should say, in the CFP?
Yeah, I don't even think it's a big group of 5 game. I just flat out think it's one of the biggest college football games of the weekend. Friday night, so we get it on CBS Sports Network. It kind of gets that standalone window, which is really good because I think, Jacqueline, yeah, people know about Ashton Jenty. I don't think many people know Boise State, and they're a really good team. Pushed Oregon to the wire. I know everyone remembers Ohio State did. Boise did as well. And then on the other side, I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think most people's familiarity with UNLV this year has been, okay, well, Barry Odom's out there. He used to be the head coach at Missouri, and they had that quarterback quit. That's what you know about them. And in reality, they're a really good team. They've been a buzzsaw. I thought they had a tough spot at Oregon State last weekend. They got past that, got pushed late, but they got past that. And now we set up for this collision course. Everyone kind of had their fingers crossed hoping for it, and we get it Friday night. It should be a phenomenal atmosphere. Think about that out there in Allegiant Stadium.
And we're going to talk more about the quarterback situation there at UNLV in just a moment. But you mentioned it, Pate, that most people know Ashton Jeanty, and it's for good reason. There's a lot of hype, a lot of Heisman buzz, of course. And here's what his head coach, Spencer Danielson, had to say about all of that.
We are in Ash's life to protect him and keep him focused on what matters most, which is him being a 20-year-old, him focusing on being the best football player he can be, the best student he can be, the best young man he can be. For me, even the best young man of Christ he can be. Like, I talk to him, like, what are you feeding yourself? I'm not talking food. Like, what are you feeding yourself? Are you listening to the right things? What kind of podcast you in? Have you been going to church? Like, I want to help surround him because the amount of influences pulling at him that want his attention, I can't even imagine. I know what I'm getting. And I'm not Deuce, and I can only imagine what he's getting. But he's such a phenomenal young man and teammate that it is my job to protect him, to make sure that people, the time that he does give outside sources for either media or time, we got to be very calculated with it so he can still be a 20-year-old that's focused on continuing to grow.
So, Pate, really quickly, I just want to get your take on what Spencer Danielson had to say there, because some people might think, hey, like, he is focused on the right things. He is the Heisman Trophy co-favorite. Like, let him enjoy this moment, because we don't see a running back from Boise State being in this position very often, if ever.
I think so, but then the counter to that, if you want to call it a counter, would be, well, the formula for him getting where he's gotten is going to be different than the formula moving forward, because the externals, the outside distractions, the noise, however people want to phrase that, that's going to be ramped up. And the thing about that to always understand is you could view that as a reward. You could view that as fruits of your labor. They're only coming to you in a positive manner because what you have accomplished has been positive. So in order to reinforce that and to keep it being the case moving forward, you have to continue to adhere to whatever process it was that got you to where you are. And if you start dividing that time, if your pie chart looks a little more external and a little less focused on internals, which all sounds like coach speak, by the way, that's when you can go off the rails a little bit. And that's how, if you and I were talking in December, we'd be having a conversation, what went wrong for Ashton Jenty, instead of, wow, is he going to win this thing Saturday night? And this thing being the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, and when we're talking about Ashton Jenty, he already has over 1,200 rushing yards. And for reference, of course, as you know, Pate, Reggie Bush, when he won the Heisman back in 2005, finished the season with less than that, with 1,740. So is this the most dominant performance that we've ever seen from a collegiate running back, in your opinion?
It's up there. I mean, Derrick Henry was a monster when he was at Alabama. This is just, it's a much different type of player, type of running back. But it's kind of something you have to see, because I know on the hoof, I know a lot of people who don't stay glued to Boise football or G5 football. You're going to think he's only padding his stats against inferior competition. Well, number one, he's not on a superior team talent-wise, so it's not like a bunch of all-stars that are being trotted out there week in and week out. And secondly, that is not the case. And if you'll watch a Boise game, you'll realize that's not the case. He is a phenomenal athlete. He'd start for I don't know which team he wouldn't start for in the Power 5 ranks. It's just so uncommon these days in the portal NIL era for us to see this happening at Boise instead of at a Georgia or at a Miami or something.
As promised, we got to talk about that quarterback situation at UNLV because, to your point, Pate, most people, when they think UNLV, they think about Matthew Sluka and that whole quarterback situation where he left the team over an NIL dispute. Now we have Malik Williams taken over. He's gone 3-1 in his 4 starts. What have you learned from this midseason quarterback change?
I learned that they were right not to freak out. When all this was going down with Sluka nationally, people knew that UNLV had won some games, and you just assumed they don't have supreme quarterback depth. But I remember kicking the can around and just, doing some asking around, and they weren't freaked out. They weren't even mad. Like, they just kind of were the shruggy emoji. And it wasn't that they were mailing it in. It's not like the attitude you would have if you were 2-5. This team was either undefeated or had 1 loss at the time. And they said, we'll be okay. I mean, we got a good player here in Malik Williams. It lessens our ability to have injury at that position. But if you get hurt at quarterback, you're kind of SOL anyway. So he's come in, and I want you to not only notice that he's played well, look at how that team's responded. And that's not to throw anyone under the bus. We don't even need to get into how this went down the way it did, but it did go down. And that team's responded. And it always is really interesting when you see some kind of public drama play out, when you see a coach move on or a player move on or someone gets fired. I never care about the headlines. I care about how the locker room reacts, because that'll tell you more than any headline will ever tell you.
All right, finally, Pate, we know you're going to be there in person, so pick a winner for us. Who do you think comes out on top? Is it going to be Boise State or is it going to be UNLV?
I very, very slightly am leaning UNLV. I don't have strong feel on this. I think it's going to be a great game. So, I mean, your number's kind of a coin flip on it. I'm kind of coin flipped on it. I think collectively, the momentum that team has at UNLV and the second win they found with Williams, who we were just talking about, I think it'll be good enough. I do not think this is some recipe where they shut down Ashton Jenty in the process. He will get his. I think it's a game played in the 30s or higher. I will slightly lean UNLV.
All right, and Boise State -110 to make this CFP as you're looking at the rest of the schedule there. Thank you so much, Pate. More to come from Pate in just a moment, but make sure you check out Josh Pate's college football show every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, live on YouTube. Make sure you check it out.